First thing I need to call out is I am not an expert at industrial development. That is not what we're here to look at today. I'm not going to teach you how to do industrial development. You're all much better equipped to do that than me. What I'm here to do is show you how to use Giraffe and show you how to use Giraffe in some ways that we've learned industrial architects, industrial developers, city planners look at these kinds of sites. We're going to focus mainly on yield, site constraints, and the proformas that go along with those questions. We're not going to focus on finding sites. That's a whole different kettle of fish, which we can definitely do with Giraffe, but we're not going to do it on this call today. Okay, so as I go through this, if there's anything that sticks out to you, like I said, chuck it in the chat. Let's have a conversation about it. I'm going to focus on the Atlanta market. It's a market I know relatively well. And if you're friends of the Giraffe family, you'll be familiar with our partnership with Urbanize. And so as part of what I will use to orient myself for finding a good site that matched our criteria here, I've just gone to Urbanize and found this particular article from a year ago. I love this project. It's going to work really well in Giraffe. And there are some really obvious reasons why it's laid out this way. So we'll talk through why it's laid out that way and some of the things around circulation and truck courts and whatnot. So let's get to it. So first thing I'm going to do before I even begin here is I need to add some things into my view that are going to help us tell the story of this site. Firstly to ourselves, and then secondly to any investor that we intend on showing this to, city planner, consultant, etc. And predominantly I do that with the part of Giraffe that we call geospatial, or maps is the loose term that I use. So I'm going to open up the data layer here, the data layer library. This is by default going to show us all of the data layers that are publicly available within Giraffe. If you're a paid Giraffe customer, you have a license, you can actually add your own data layers as well. So oftentimes there will be great data sets that aren't actually in Giraffe right now that are going to be super helpful for understanding the site that we're looking at. So whilst I'm doing this, Holly, I might have you jump onto the City of Atlanta's website and grab the MARTA locations data set. Okay. That would be awesome if you wouldn't mind, and just chuck it to me in Slack and I'll add that in.
Yep.
A few layers that I love to add in when I'm looking at industrial projects. These are the classics. They always tell you quite a lot about what you're looking at. And these are publicly available. So I'm going to type in here contours. And we actually have connected to the US Geological Survey to get their 3-foot contours layer. So you can see that layer there. And let's grab the Fish and Wildlife wetlands data. Again, for industrial, particularly around where we're looking, often wetlands is going to kill you. So that being said, wetlands policies seem to be in flux at the moment. Love someone more educated than me to talk about what's happening there. And I'm just going to close this and open it again. You can see as I did that, it loaded in the USGS data set. Search for wetlands. There we go. You've updated that link for 2023. And then let's also bring in the FEMA flood data. So I'll just type flood. Now, like I said, these are just publicly available. They are already within Giraffe. You don't have to do anything special to get them on your account. As I add those in, you'll notice they'll load up in the background and we'll start to get some information about what we're looking at. Just going to turn down the some of these layers so we get a little more visual clarity, but they're slowly loading in there in the background. Okay, super. I'm also going to load in that layer I asked Holly to go grab. So I'm just going to grab the URL that she sent to me. And this URL, I could just say, create your own layer, feature server, and I'll plop it in right here. And this is coming straight from the city. You can see atlanta.ga.gov, fetch layers from this service. And I have all sorts of things in here, zoning, parcel use, transit stops, and MARTA rail stations was the one I wanted to load in. So let's just grab that, hit next, save layer, and now I've got the MARTA locations in there as well. Really easy to add data. when you're doing industrial development, there are tons of good data sources that are worth looking at around, what power lines are coming through the US, where the substations are, et cetera, particularly if you're doing batteries and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's get on with it. What we're going to do is find this site that's on Urbanized that I really like the look of, and we are going to start to plan our development. So as I try and find it, I know it's near the Atlanta airport, and I think I've turned the map labels down, which was silly. There we go. And which is down here, and it's right in this elbow. Now, obviously, when we're talking about real estate here, what we buy and sell are parcels. So we do need to add in some kind of parcel data. You can already see the flux capacitor, the Y here coming in. That is sort of determining the layout of this site before we've even done anything. But I'll go in and I'm just going to add in a data layer that we sell with our partnership with a company called Regrid. If you haven't checked out Regrid, they're awesome. They have parcels for the whole US. And I'm going to use their data to define the boundary of this site. This one process, if you're not already a Giraffe customer, can be a total pain in the neck. So let's just look at it. It's a kind of a complex site. It's got this easement here, which when I looked at the site plan seems to be cut out, so we'll avoid that one. But it's all these parcels down here. So let's just say add to selection, add to selection, add to selection. I'm just building up a set of parcels here that are going to inform the macro parcel that is this development. Now, obviously, someone has scored a ripper here. So it goes all the way from Conley Road up the side of Gilbert to this change in zoning up here, and then right down Perimeter Road. So let's take this, we'll say use selection, combine in new project. Let's hit that, boom, confirm. I can save it, call this industrial example. And if you have a portfolio license, you can track all sorts of other things in here. We're not going to do that right now. We're just going to focus purely on the test fitting and the numbers. Okay, now, again, just calling out some features in Giraffe. I know we're at 11 minutes and I haven't drawn anything yet, so bear with me. Because this is cloud-based, I can actually add in anyone within my organization right now to edit with me. So I'm just going to add Holly. And as I'm working here, you'll see her cursor come in the background and start to work in concert with me. Okay, so that's done. We've found the site, we've established the boundary, we've brought in the constraints, as in the physical constraints. We've brought in the flood data, the wetlands, and whatnot. And now we're going to start laying out our building. If I wanted to, let's say I'd already had a site plan done as part of the brokerage packet that we received, or we've already paid an architect, we could bring those parcels in already. Sorry, we could bring that site plan in. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow what clearly the designer has done prior to us looking at this site, and just try and figure out where this best spot is. So obviously there's some kind of parcel up here for a big building, and they've put 2 buildings down here, and they've put these other 2 buildings in here. And then as I turn on that flood zone, you can see it's actually quite big. It's this thick sort of geometry here that we may turn into some other kind of space. Now, interestingly enough, we've also got these, it's relatively terrainous. It's not terrible because these are 3-foot contours, but it's not great either. So there's going to be some cut and fill metrics that we'll need to do, which we may not get to on this call, but we'll call it out anyways as something that's going to influence this deal. So the first thing I'm going to do as I approach this site is just lay down some rectangles. So what I'm going to do is grab from the drawing tools down the bottom, an industrial building, boom, and I'm going to make this say 200 feet or maybe 250 feet. You can see as I'm working here, I'm just typing on my keyboard, and I'll stretch this out across like this. Okay, about 270,000 square feet of industrial there. And maybe we want to do it a little wider, stick it up the back. Now, bearing in mind, when we look at this little sub parcel, we're going to have to do things like access, circulation, parking, trailer parking. There's quite a lot we need to fit in here. So let's bring it actually back to 250. And let's add in our truck court. Now, the typology I'm going to use to do my truck court is what I call, or what Giraffe calls, the plaza. And the plaza is an interesting data set or a data type because it's measured as hardscape on our analytics. So if you notice as I draw there, I'm going to get a different kind of metric here under hardscape, which is going to include roads and plaza. So this effectively is just a big concrete pad, and that's what we want for our truck court here. Loading zones may go all the way to the edge, or they might just load here. We're going to sort of do this sort of thing, which is what was in that site plan. Next, I'm going to establish my road network to get circulation around this building. I think they have some parking here, some staff parking here, some trailer parking along the front, and then the road goes right the way around the building. So let's look at our first technical element here. So everything we've done so far is just laying out rectangles. Pretty simple. Mind you, we're getting these areas measured live, which is great. But what I want to understand is the depth of the number of trailers I can park down here. So I'm going to use the parking algorithm for that. I'm going to click on the lightning bolt, say car park, and trailer parking is about 60 feet from memory. If you're doing double stack, then maybe it's 120. We're going to go 60 for now, and we'll come the whole way across the apron. And you can see I'm holding S. When I hold S, I get center points of lines or edges. S is snap. And as I do that, you can see it's defaulting to just a regular car size with a road aisle. And that's not what we want for this geometry. We want large or tall truck bays, and they're going to be wider as well. So how do we customize the car parking algorithm to give us a purpose beyond what we're looking at here? So first, I'm going to click the car parking algorithm. This is getting into the flow builder. If you have never seen the flow builder before, it's one of my favorite parts of Giraffe. Holly does some great deep dives on the flow builder. I recommend you checking them out. She'll stick some YouTube links in the chat as we're talking here. I'm going to click on the car park, and as I go on the car park, it's going to give me two things. One, it's giving us an output that tells us that this is a car park. But two, it's also got this algorithm in here called parking lots. And you can see I've got these different parameters here that I can use to tell Giraffe what we mean by a parking space. So because we're doing truck parking, or trailer parking, not car parking, we want to change our length to 60 feet. And you note when I do that, it just takes the entire 60-foot section, turns it into horizontal parking, or vertical parking, I should say. And then let's make our bay width 12. So now you can see I have roughly 65 trailer parks. Now, lastly, I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to add in a property called trailer parking to the output. And I'm going to make that the number 1, okay? Now, I will come back to why I've done this when we get into our calculations. But I often get asked questions around, can I separate out my truck parking count from my staff parking count? And this is kind of a sneaky way of doing so. Okay, so let's do our truck parking there, and then let's get our staff parking up here, like this. Okay, like that. Don't really want it in there. Apron. And then let's do our circulation. Now, this master plan is beautiful and green. It's got all these trees. It's got these trees across the drive aisles. So instead of just using a typical road, let's use a fun road. We go back into the lightning bolt and select my avenue. No, we don't want avenue with a cycle path. We want avenue just by itself. And the access came off Gilbert Road kind of like this. It had a big L and it splits. I'm going to do the whole way around first. So we'll go around like this, across the front, up around here, across the back, and then it stops. Okay. Now you notice when I do that, a couple of things are going to stand out to you if you do industrial development. One is this road is extraordinarily wide. It's way too wide. Two is the corners are way too sharp. You can't get a truck around this corner. The trees are nice. Maybe overkill, depending on what your investment mandate is, but how green it really is. So let's go and mess with it. Let's take that road and make it thinner. Let's make it 30 feet wide. Better. Footpath probably unnecessary, so let's get that down to 0. And then let's go change our turning radius for these corners. You know, obviously the soft corners are not so bad, but these sharp corners are going to kill us when we have long lorries that we're trying to fit through. So again, we're going to go back to the flow builder. And as I open up the flow builder, what we're doing here is we're looking at that geometry as a whole. We're seeing that line that I drew that turned into 3 different lines, 2 lines of trees and 1 line of road. So before it gets to an output of road, I'm going to add a step, and that step is going to round the corners to make us have softer turns. And I'll make the turning radius quite extreme for the purposes of this. I'm going to make it 100 feet, that turning radius. So as I hit save there, we go back into the project. Oh, little fail. 100 feet. Save. There we go. Now I've got these beautifully soft corners here that are actually going to turn trucks. And it's also super helpful when you have a tight turn like that, or it's not actually tight, but it becomes tight with your building. You can start to see, okay, well, actually, our road now intersects with our building, so we need to get more space here as we're looking for proper turning radiuses. Probably need a little more clearance from the building here. I'm just dragging these points out, make sure that we can still sit within the parameters of the site. Okay, great. So we have a 250,000 square foot building. We had about 35 truck spaces, plenty of staff parking. 150 might be too much. Let's bring it down a little bit. And we have our access. Let's go add in a road to just split out onto the truck court. And you'll notice if you've done roads in Giraffe before that they create these really nice intersections. So I'll just zip that down here, or however you want to do it. Maybe it's kind of forked when it hits the court. Again, I'm no expert. Okay, something like that. And let's get rid of that footpath again. Okay. So this first one, a little slow, but fast when you compare it to, doing it by paper. Before I move on to laying out the rest of the site, let's spend some time thinking about the numbers here. I want to underwrite this site as basically thinking about it one project at a time. So I'm managing it right now as a default on just one drawing layer. And often with big industrial parks like this, there'll be some kind of phased construction, and we're using each phase to underwrite the next phase of development. So let's consider this one as its own phase. I'm going to leave it on the default drawing layer and come back to adding different layers when we add in the different phases. Okay, so first of all, let's create a little calculation to figure out our parking. Like I said, we've got these 2 different parking types, and we want to calculate them separately. So jumping into analytics, analytics gives us the ability to basically make up our own calculations. As we look at developers across the world, everybody does things slightly different. And that's part of what makes you guys great developers, is your deal structures are different. The things that you care about on site are different. Do you have a green mandate? Do you not have a green mandate? Are you building for yourself, or are you building on behalf of a client? And often a client may have some metrics that you need to care about. So Giraffe is a tool that, similar to Excel, that allows you to create your own metrics on a deal or on a feasibility or a test fit. So let's start with a blank slate here and create our own calculations. The first one, as I say, is going to be around parking. So I'm going to add in a category here, which we'll just call build form metrics, just as a catch-all for the things that we need to measure. And I'm going to create a calculation here. So I just hit that little plus right next to the category I want to put it in. And I want to get all the all the parking counts, parking bay count. You notice if I hit A here and make it unitless, it's going to give me a number of parking bays across this project. However, I'm going to show you something cool here. I'm going to get the parking bay count. Only need it one time. We're going to make a quick calculation that asks the question of, is it a truck? Is it a trailer parking? geometry. And remember, we added that 1 to the geometries where it was a trailer. So we'll say trailer parking in this sense, in this case, is equal to A, the number of parking bays, multiplied by B, which is our true false of is parking. And you can see when I make that distinction, it zeroes out the ones without that trailer parking metric and adds the one with trailer parking metric. So we'll say, perfect, trailer parking is true. And then to do the same thing without that, we'll say staff parking. Oops, not category, I don't want a category. Let's get rid of that guy. And I will say trailer parking, let's duplicate him. We'll call this staff parking. And here our calculation is slightly different. It's A minus A times B. Because we're taking the total parking count and we're minusing the trailer parking count. So let's hit save. Oh, why is that not calculating? Might need some parentheses. Ollie, anything I'm missing there? Why would that not sum? People still out there in the big bad world?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's all right. Let's do it another way. A times B. Okay, that's fine. We're going to go, so we'll add one more metric, call this total parking. We'll just make it equal A. It's unitless. And then we'll just add a third metric, which is staff parking. And that is total parking less trailer parking. Now you can see in analytics, what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing previous measures. Instead of grabbing properties, which are being derived by the model, I'm grabbing measures. And we'll say staff parking equals total parking A minus trailer parking B. And again, it's unitless. So there we can see as we draw, we're going to start to get these things that fill out. Okay, cool. So that's one custom calculation. Again, everything that I'm doing here can be templatized. So whether we're doing multiple phases or multiple projects, that logic of is truck bay is something that can persist. We don't have to set it up every time. All right, so that's a very simple layout. Let's jump in here. And again, if you have any questions, stick it in the chat about what I was doing there. I know I went into a bit of a complex session here. Before I move on though, I want to consider detention volume. And detention volume is also something that is quite nuanced in what market you're in, and how you calculate that is different in every market. But it's one of those things that's quite important to factor into a deal. This deal, I know, just from having looked at it already doesn't have a huge detention problem because it's got natural sort of drainage on the site. Now, whether you think that's a good or a bad thing, I'd love to know. But we're going to pretend that it does have a drainage issue, okay? I'm going to add a whole new calculation here, and we'll call this detention metrics. Now, for those of you who've done detention before, you'll know that detention is a factor of the amount of hardscape or impervious surfaces that we have covering the site. Usually it's something like area of impervious surfaces multiplied by a coefficient that the county or the state mandates. That equals your volume of retention that you have to calculate or you have to provide on the site. So let's take all of our impervious areas, which is parking, roads, building, parking, truck court. I'm going to go to the site area here, and we're going to say paved area total plus building area total. Now, you can see we've got those two metrics there. So I'm just going to say A plus B. And this is our total impervious area. Assuming we haven't used porous concrete or something like that. Again, way out of my depth to give any kind of guidance there. And we'll call this square feet and we'll save. And then we'll add another metric, which we'll call detention volume required. And this is now in cubic feet, where we take that previous measure of total impervious area, A, and we multiply it by our coefficient, which is usually like 3/4 of an inch or something like that. So to get that into feet, we'd say 0.75 divided by 12. And there's our volume calc, 33,000 cubic feet of water. So this is a volume calc. Some people do it as a percentage of the site, like site coverage. This is work for you and your engineer to figure out together. I want to show it to you as it relates to the site plan. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put a detention pond up here. I'm just hitting P on my keyboard. I'm just going to draw a random shape. And then I'm going to give it the usage detention pond. Okay. Now, it's pretty rectangular right now, just a simple design trick. Just like we flatten the corners of the road, we can flatten the corners of the pond. So it's open flow builder, round corners. And let's give those round corners like a 30-foot radius. Ah, much nicer. Looks much more like a pond now. Beautiful. Look at that. And as you can see, it's collecting the area of that detention pond, but we may want to give it a depth. So let's open up that detention basin and see, okay, out of the box, it's giving us a 2-foot depth. Let's make that a bit deeper, like 6 feet. And then let's go and build a calculation that tells us the total volume of water that we've catered for on the site. So we'll do a new calculation. It relates specifically to the detention basin, and it's the gross area multiplied by the depth. Now, again, very simplistic calculation. We could add in a trapezoidal calculation if we want. Again, that's probably more than we're going to need to do here on this call. And we'll call this detention basin volume provided. Okay, beautiful. And now we've got these 3 metrics here. And the last thing we might do is just the delta between these two. Obviously, we've got heaps. I may have made a mistake in my calculation there, but wanted to show you the point of being able to add in basins and compare it to a KPI or a target that show us. So, hey, let's just say, let's make that depth like 1 foot. There we go, like that. So now we're on target. Some just very shallow mosquito pond up here. Okay, so we've done some work. We've got some metrics. We haven't done any financial calculation yet, so we're hoping that this produces some kind of yield. But let's reuse everything here, at least these guys, to quickly finish off our site plan. I'll create a new drawing layer. We'll call this phase 2. And what I want to do here is just grab these 2 elements, Control C on my keyboard, Control V to paste. And I'm pasting now. You'll see when I paste, it pasted it on phase 2. So on a new drawing layer, I'll run this up the side of this road here. You can see I'm sticking to these quadrants or triads that the site is sort of forcing me to stay on. Shrink this down a little bit. And we can fit that guy there. And then let's grab him again, copy paste. And you can see just how fast we can start to move. We'll do some circulation and entry and exit there in a second. Copy paste again. And stick this guy up here. I think he's slightly too long now. And then like that. And we'll get another one of them. If you haven't used multi-select before, multi-select is probably one of the most helpful tools in Giraffe, where you can select multiple things at once. And that's what I was using to grab those buildings. Multi-select, I hit Shift on my keyboard and I drag in a window like this. So Shift, click, drag. And if I click drag from the left, this is a CAD technique. If I click drag from the left and I only intersect things, it won't select anything. If I click drag from the left and I fully encompass things, it'll select them, what I have fully encompassed. The opposite is true if you come from the other way, where I can select everything that I intersect if I drag from the bottom right. So that's a little little tip for you as we're going through this. All right, let's add in our circulation. So I'm going to say again, let's use a nice road like we did up here. Take our exit off of Gilbert, and I think we'll come across the lake on this existing road. We'll come around here. And I actually noticed in this plan, if you look at this plan, I have no idea how trucks are supposed to turn around. Oh, I guess they have full circulation around this one. Yeah, this one doesn't have full circulation around, so confused about how they're going to get out of that, but whatever, I'm sure someone's thought about it. So let's pop back over here and we'll get our full circulation. We'll go back to the road. We want this down to be 30 feet. We want the footpath to be 0. And let's go around the building here like this. Now there's some cool things on there that I want to show you as well. Like for instance, you may notice they have these parking bays that wrap the road. You can have a look at that. And let's go in here. Fairly quiet group. Holly, have we had any good questions come through?
Nope.
James must be being too boring. I can spice it up a little bit and start making big mistakes. There's obviously a cliff right there. You see that? I am already making a mistake. So let's come back off the cliff. Should we then build something that we can't build? Okay, go flatten the corners. If you guys remembered how to do that, we'll say open flow builder, add a step, round the corners, 100-foot turning radius. All right, nice flat corners, beautiful. And then I'm guessing that this, at the end of this truck court, pops back onto the road here, and that's how they do it. So let's show that. A part of what I want to show for those who are actually paying attention is how we can then, once we've made this project, we can use each one of these components in a future project. I'm just going to grab my road and do a merge like this onto the court. 0 footpath. Same on the other side. 0 footpath. And for those who are paying attention, we'll also calculate our linear feet of road so we can start to do some fun financial analysis. Okay. And so on and so forth. I won't bore you with laying out the rest of the roads. You get the idea. We want to basically pay attention to reality of how things are going to flow throughout the site. And the big challenge then is, do we have enough space to build the kind of buildings that we're building without creating these absolute headaches of disrupting all this soil? We can even come back a little bit here. Removing, giant volumes of soil that just drastically change the economics of the site. Okay, so let's pause there for a minute. Questions or concerns?
Yeah, hey, this is Alex. I think, Holly, I don't think that necessarily answered my question. If you look at the screen, if you turn off your topo, James.
Yeah.
And then scroll out. And actually, if you turn off your wetlands too, I'm just looking at the border of the site. So you see how it becomes just like a square?
Yes.
Not actually showing the parcel lines. That's what I was asking, if that's.
Okay, good question. So that I'm glad you caught that because I didn't catch that. So
Yeah.
if
James, I did fix it. So if you refresh, it'll fix, but feel free to show how to fix it.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'll explain why it's done what it's done. See this easement through here? When you create a project that has a boundary that's defined by sites that aren't joined, Giraffe goes, oh, you want to consider this group. So it bounds all of those geometries, doesn't treat them as a single geometry. And there's a reason for that I won't get into on this call, but that's the way that it works. So I made a mistake there. That's totally my fault. What we should be doing is using a different setting here. And I'm going to just do it from scratch, Holly, just so to show people how it works. When we have sites that have an easement running through them, and there's no easy way to select adjoining sites. We're actually going to have to do it manually. So I'm going to add in the regrid layer as a, actually I might have the regrid layer. Do I have the regrid layer? I don't have the regrid layer. Shame. All right. How are we going to do this, Holly?
I can add it to the project for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Would you mind? Well, mind you, when I refresh, it's going to come back fixed, so it's not going to demo particularly well, but that's okay. Add it to the project and I'll explain what's happened there. Good catch, Alex. Is that a problem that you have had a couple of times on your side?
Yes.
Yeah. And have you, I assume you haven't figured out how to solve that problem?
Nope. I usually just turn on the regrid layer and have to toggle it on and off.
Yeah, that's a pain in the bum. Okay. And because as well, the boundary gives you this wonderful analytical help that, you know, what your FAR is determined by the boundary, being able to quickly show what the area of the site is. Very, very helpful. So to not have an accurate boundary is a pain in the neck. Okay, so let's, have you done that, Holly, by any chance?
Yep, just
Thank you.
refresh.
So I'll hit refresh. Holly's added that layer to the project. You can see it's coming here, regrid layer. Let's just pay close attention to what I'm going to do here. So in Giraffe, there is a couple of modes, and one of those modes allows us to use geometries as a way to create polygons. So if I look at the parcel boundary here, I can actually right click on any feature and create a geometry. Now that geometry is not the boundary. That's just a geometry that I've created. So if I wanted to turn that into a giant commercial building, I could, but that's not helpful for what we're trying to do. So what we want to do is take that boundary and turn it into the boundary of the site. So we need to be in edit boundary mode to do so. So if I hit down here, see, once I've saved a project, I don't have it up there anymore. I have to go down here to edit project boundary. So I hit edit project boundary, and I'm just going to turn it into this boundary over here to demonstrate my point. Big collections of parcels like this are always a bit more complicated. So the first thing I'm going to do is start at the top with the biggest collection of parcels. Because if they're not adjacent, it's not going to work. It's going to freak out. I'll show you why. I hit set on this parcel. If I hit set on or merge on one that's over the road, it's going to freak out. Can't do it. Okay. And it can't do it because they're not joined. So what we need to do is go, okay, let's set this parcel. Let's merge with that one that's next to it. Come on now. Oh, they only merge with shapes that are adjacent. That is an adjacent shape by my calculation. Let's try now. Okay, so you see that? Sometimes they're actually not adjacent. So I just dragged it into that shape and now it's adjacent. Let's say merge that. And then we'll come down to this bit. It's complicated, Alex. Merge that. Now, this is the $1 million problem. These two are not joined, and so the parcel boundary can't easily be set. So I'm just going to make them intersect. Then I can right click and say merge, merge, merge. But you still have to make a decision around how Giraffe is going to treat that easement. Is it part of the area calcs, or is it an exclusion to the area calcs? If it's an exclusion, then I would run this all the way up like that and just create this tiny little road that is insignificant from an area calculation perspective. And then you're good to go. Hit done. Now I have to find the site perfectly. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So it's a funny, what you've come up against here is a funny like effect from a really cool feature set in Giraffe, which is being able to right click on anything and turn it into either the site boundary or into a geometry. It's a very, very powerful feature, but it can hurt you if you don't know what you're doing with it. And you can see as I've drawn, actually, now I've got this, I'm totally out of the site because we were working to the wrong boundary, like you said. I'm so glad you brought that up. All right, any more questions? That's a great question, that one. Nope, we don't. All right, I might keep going. So in that case, let's have a look at how we can turn some of these elements into useful design library components that we can then reuse on future projects. Again, super helpful if you are doing a lot of site studies and feasibilities. Holly, I don't actually know how to do the rooftop thing that you're messaging me about. Well, I do, but I don't want to show on this call because I'm going to, oh, well, we'll experiment. We'll figure it out. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably be experimenting too, but I would imagine you would do an inner offset and then a subdivision.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So before we go and do something cool like that, let's label these. I'm going to label this guy up here as, our standard larger industrial building. So I just come down here to the annotation. I say add label to existing, click on that guy there. And now I can add, I've got this option now as properties to add a label. So let's call this large industrial building. Maybe we want to add in a label to that parking to show that it's got 65 parking spaces. Click on that guy, hit label. And now here's a cool little feature of Giraffe. I'm going to open up our settings here and just click the edit button for the label. You can see you can actually, just like you would in mail merge or something like that, you can add in any property from the geometry that we've drawn to denote the label. So I'm just going to add parking bays per level. And you can see now when I save that marker, it's telling me how many parking bays are there, and it's dynamic. So if we change it, it's going to recalculate, which is pretty neat for when you are displaying this to an investor, and to have that live count just showing. And it, obviously it's beautiful and animated as you move things around. I was going to show adding in metrics from different sides here, so I might do that real quick too. Let's add in our truck court here, our truck parking. So parking here, car park, I should say. It's on grade. Open the flow builder to make our parking lots long and wide. We can drop this down. We'll make sure that this is being drawn onto phase 2. So we'll change the layer here from default to phase 2. Okay, super. And I'm going to copy paste that, drop it down here. Okay, sweet. So you'll remember when we were looking at analytics, we had broken it out by different parking types and different retention that was required on the different sites. And I'm just going to call this small industrial. So let's go back and look at analytics now and notice that everything is smushing together into a giant analysis, something that's not incredibly helpful for us as we're trying to determine the phases of this project. So I'm going to hit this big configure button up the top, and let's tell Giraffe to break the math out here by layer. As I do that, you can see it's got default and phase 2 has been broken out. And now I can see the metrics by phase. How much parking have we delivered for each phase? What's the total impervious parking? Now you'll notice that it's saying that this is, these are parking counts that are not truck parking, not trailer parking. So let's go denote them as trailer parking. Go to car park, add a new property called trailer is 1. Yes. And I'll add in another one down here. Perfect, beautiful. See how it just jumped up there? This is on the wrong layer, so let's change that to phase 2. All right, that's better. So I've broken out that analysis by layer. We could go one step further and actually do like individual parcels. If anyone's interested in that, put it in the chat and I'll show you how to do that for like breaking down the site into mini parcels. But I'm going to move on from that and get to industrial design library now. So what we've done here is we've created a template of calculations that we care about for projects like this. We've created some great designs and we've added in some incredible data layers. So now, and to boot, I've used a public source to think about how to lay out sort of build to suit industrial projects. So now I can say, okay, I've got my rough idea here. I've followed the constraints of the site. I've built some great assets. Let's go to a new site, so a new project. And let's turn on regrid here. Oh, actually, sorry, before we do that, I want to turn this guy into a template. So I'm going to open up settings, use that previous project as a template. So now when we hit new project, I can add in, should be able to add in. I need to refresh before I do that. Maybe.
It takes a second sometimes to go from template to not.
Okay, good to know. Give it a refresh. If in doubt with Giraffe, give it a refresh. That's what I like to say. We're also going to add in this really cool truck when we get a minute. Now we're nearly at an hour, so great time to ask questions. Look at this industrial example. Perfect. So now I can say, all right, let's start from that industrial template. I'm going to do that, adds in all my data layers, adds in all my calculations, and I can move to any site that I care about. Let's go back up to Atlanta. Turn that regrid data layer on. Start looking for more parcels near the airport that match our criteria. The one we just did was in there. But look at this whole corridor is awesome. Tons of big sites that may work. And let's turn our wetlands on, turn our contours on, flood on, way too hilly. And you can see how good that spot was. Pretty good. Good access. Okay. Maybe this guy up here, I wonder who's working on that. Somebody probably. So let's grab that site there. And I'm going to say create from regrid. Oh, so notice I haven't saved the project yet. So I still have this draw boundary to save project button. Hit draw boundary to save project. And now I right click and hit set. If it says create, you're not in edit boundary mode. You're creating objects. So let's hit done. Big wetlands through the site, relatively flat. Someone should be looking at this. The zoning of this site is C1C, which is commercial. Brilliant. I'm sure someone already owns it. Let's actually look at who owns it. Owned by
Says Jonesboro South.
Owned by Jonesboro South Investors. Very cryptic. Very cryptic indeed. Okay, so now I've got all my calculations, but let's go grab from our design library those previous shapes. So I'm going to hit the little 3 dots down here and say open design library. Project I want to reference is the one we just did, industrial example. You see there's my whole site layout. I can add individual elements, or I can go grab individual features, or I can grab entire layers. Remember, we've broken out the site into different components. See, I obviously screwed it up somewhere in there. Or we can group them together. I'm just going to select industrial building, truck court, and the parking. And let's get right in there and make sure we click the right thing. I'm just zooming in. It's going to add in the road too. All right, whatever. Add 3 features to project. Boom, right down on the site. Now I can start laying out, and you can see everything's coming with me here as I design. I do really want that truck parking though, so let's go get that. Or trailer parking, I should say. If you work off like standard built form, you're trying to standardize the way you build a product, this is an incredible way to do it because you're bringing in the exact dimensions. You're not screwing with it and you're just laying it out on the site. Something like that. Move our road around too. Get tied up there. Let's bring it down. See, our corners are telling us quite a lot here about kind of circulation we need. We have no truck caught there, so let's swing that around. And then we just need our parking. All right, if there are no more questions, yeah, truck parking, perfect. Trailer parking, you can see it's actually counting correct, which is just legendary. A little site plan here. This one we're doing in 2 minutes. Pop it down here, back a little bit, and then let's do this guy right here. So you guys probably are looking at this and just wincing, absolute pain at what I've laid out here, but very fast, very, very fast. All right, folks, if you have any questions, please email me. I want to get in there and help you guys on real projects as opposed to these theoretical ones. But I hope this has been really helpful, establishing things like turning radiuses, how to denote trailer parking versus regular parking. What else have we looked at? Calculations like retention, how to make sure we are providing sufficient retention early on, making sure there's enough space on the site to meet the client's needs, plus the county requirements, and then building something that's easy for people to understand. There are other things we can do, which we'll do in another call, like adding rooftop solar panels and stuff like that to try and understand your EV capacity. But I might not get into that right now, given we've only got 5 minutes left. So please, anybody with any questions, now's your last chance. All right, folks. Well, thank you for the time. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you directly if you have any questions. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, James.
Pleasure. Talk to you soon.